Uh, Thank you very much. It's really great to be in here. Also looking to the age group, it's scary to be in here. Uh, the problem with film directors, especially documentary film directors, that we shoot more than like 100 hours to make the first cut of the film that goes like 4 hours to make 45 minutes film. So I'll try to make it now as one shot, like 15 minutes presentation. Let's see how this goes in a way. But I wanted to make one thing really clear from the beginning. When I got the invitation, and I really thank everyone for the invitation to be here again, but when I got the invitation, I made it clear that I'm not academia, I'm not specialist on Salafis, yet I got the great advantage to live with Salafis for more than 6 months to do this BBC film documentary about Salafis. After the revolution, following the story of two Salafi guys during the parliamentary election phase in Egypt, back in 2011, of course. But again, before we go on the presentation, who are the Salafis? Because that was a very important thing a question for myself before actually putting the film out, or actually before shooting the film. Because we had this stereotype about Salafis in Egypt, that those are the ultra-conservative Islamists who are really thinking backward all the time. And that was part of a process of otherness that the Egyptian cinema and the Egyptian media made for a long time, that led at the end to completely fake reality that we lived in. I remember that when I told my friends the first day that I'm doing I was meeting some friends in one of the bars in Cairo, and I told them, okay, I'm doing a documentary about Salafi. And they were like, okay, you didn't drink anything, you're just hallucinating. How can you say so in a way? But then I told them, yeah, it's a character-driven observational documentary. I'm gonna make a documentary to show who the Salafi are. And it was really surprising for me that I discovered that my friends who belong to the very elite, intellectual, liberal society in Egypt, they actually don't know that much about Salafis. All what we know is this picture of the other that the old regime just projected to us through all the films and documentaries and through all the time, that we had this idea in mind that Salafis are the stupid, poor, coming from marginalized areas. And in fact, after the revolution, when we were surprised with meeting some Salafis who are exactly like us, they speak fluent English, they are with their iPads, and like, that's really funny thing, because what the spokesman of one of the biggest Salafi party in Egypt is actually a 27 years old medical doctor who always appeared with his iPad. I don't know why. I mean, in every single program, he's always with his iPad. And I remember I received a lot of comments of everyone. People were fascinated that we have this guy with iPad all the time, and he's Salafi, you know, with beard. And this is again a question of this idea of what do we mean actually by modernity, and what do we mean by traditional? Because we had this confused image about Salafis that those are the people who are just were their beers living centuries before us, and we were exposed to them, and when we've seen them on TV after they were completely oppressed, and we couldn't have access to see any Salafis, and we've seen how advanced or how similar in a way they are, it confused the public in a way. And here I have to clarify that I'm not talking about the ideology, I'm talking about the appearance and the daily interaction with people. Historically, Salafis, the Salafi movement was established by 3 medical doctors back in the late 70s in Egypt, who founded Al-Da'wah Salafiyya in Egypt, in Alexandria. 3 very promising young guys in studying to be a medical doctors. They founded this movement in Egypt with a great influence, of course, of the Salafi ideology and Salafi sheikhs coming from KSA. But then by time, they decided for different reasons, and actually the core of Salafism at that time was to preach people for good manners and just giving lessons in mosques, and they were not involved at all in politics. And and here we have to also clarify a bit, like to differentiate between the jihadis who are also part of Salafis. They have the same. They call themselves as well Salafis, but the jihadi Salafis. But there's a very very big difference between the what they called scientific Salafism. This is what they called themselves at that time, and the jihadi Salafis. And then for 30 years, they have been just working in and structuring very, very well-organized network away from the police state that they were living in, away from the eyes of the security. And then that's why after the revolution, people were surprised of how organized the Salafis are and how and how they can reach people in the grassroots way faster than the liberal elites and seculars and so on. And while people were protesting in Tahrir Square, and that's something very debatable when we discussed the Egyptian revolution, people were discussing, revolting in Tahrir Square, while on the other hand, some Salafi sheikhs said it's banned to go against the rural and against Mubarak. But they did something very essential at that time because of the cuts of services. They were down in the street, keeping the security, giving people services, taking the rubbish of the people. And so they were not as passive as we think. They served a very essential service for their neighborhoods. Quickly to the film, when we started doing the film, we decided to do a character-driven observational documentary. We chose one guy from the grassroots who's a member of a Noor party, which was the first and the biggest Salafi party in Egypt. And we chose another guy who founded a movement, a Salafi movement called Costa Salafis, or Salafiyu Costa, on the name of the very famous coffee chain, Costa Coffee. And just to give this image that Salafis are progressive, we sit in coffee shops exactly like you. He speaks fluent English, he's very nice, and he doesn't have I would call him, in a way, a progressive Salafi. And that's another question of how you can have a progressive and Salafi in the same sentence. But if you actually look at the Salafi scene in Egypt, you will discover that yes, you can sit with Tolba and you can actually disagree with him or agree on whatever, but then you have a good conversation with a guy like that. I have quick comments of things that I really realized when I was doing the film, because actually I changed a lot while doing this film. Before doing the film, I was just very active in every revolutionary activity that will happen in Tahrir Square or all other things, and just creating this revolutionary bubble, to say, and with a lot of activities and activists being celebrated as young generation and the peaceful generation and so on, while there were some people who were really working very well on the ground. And that's why it's not a surprise to discover that a party like a Noor party that is founded just in 2011 ran the elections in 2011 as well and won 30% of the seats of the parliament. While we have liberal parties with a great history over than 200 years, and they go to the election and they win no more than 5%. All this, but again, for people who did, I just say so, and because I lived with Salafis at that time, and I have seen how much they worked in the street, and how much they were organized. And this is basically the result, the direct result of the regime that we've been living to, that didn't allow liberal or normal party structure to work in a healthy environment, but just allowed people to work secretly. And that's why you have people like Muslim Brotherhoods who were functioning secretly. You have Salafis, and actually the way Salafis work is different than the Brotherhood, because at the end the Brotherhood were politically active from the beginning, and that's why they were always on the spot. While surprisingly, if you ask Egyptians before 2011 who are Salafis, they wouldn't know what the term actually means. A lot of them, they wouldn't know. They call them Sunnis, who are the nice guys in the mosque, and they don't actually interact in anything else. But then the decision that the Salafis made after the revolution to get into the politics made them under the exposure at this moment. But they had the structure ready. It didn't take them that much time to move from providing services to people and working in small mosques to be a party at the end. And the way I remember that they told me in the film that in every street or every neighborhood there is a Salafi mosque. And then few meters away there is another Salafi mosque, and there's one guy who's responsible of like 10 guys who are taking care of this mosque. But because of security reasons, those people will not actually meet each other, they will not organize anything together. But so each mosque is kind of a cell that's working separately. So after the revolution, when they just announced that they have the party, they asked the people, like the leadership asked the people to bring the data of their members, and then you had big number of members of a party that's just formed, and it's very easy to pass information and order from the leadership to the grassroots very quickly, and that's one thing about the ideology in here, that of course it has something of how to obey. It's when it's an order in the Muslim Brotherhood, or it's an order in Salafi movement, it's an order and people follow, which is not the case in liberal party, and which shouldn't be the case if you think about the ideology itself. But then the other thing that we wanted, that I noticed in the film as well, and I mentioned briefly before, that because we had the whole state was basically centered in Cairo, so there was a lot of marginalized areas where Salafis were actually providing major services for people, including health, education, and essential goods. And in that case, you have an organization, you have the nice guy in the village who's providing those, like who's taking care of this medical center, or he's taking care of like some private lessons for the kids because they don't have good education in their school. And then this guy just appear and tell them, okay, I'm still your neighbor. They don't care about the political affiliation at all in these areas. The good neighbor is asking for votes for a specific person. And because those people were actually taking the role of the government at that time, so it was really expected result that people will obey, not because they were forced to do that, but because they are convinced that this is the guy who provides services. And it's insane to expect people to be that analytical if the government, the central government, the state, do not actually provide them the main services. And they don't really have to decide their ideology, or whether they are liberals or conservatives or whatever. They're voting for the good neighbor, or they are voting according to the advice of the one that they trust. But I have to confess that the situation in Egypt is very it's very dynamic. It's changing every now and then, and because the Salafis expose themselves in the political scene, they are not the nice guy as they used to be a year ago. And as they were, people started to see what are their ideas, they were interviewed, they started to talk, and a lot of people are now reconsidering. And I guess we have parliamentary elections soon, and if it's healthy elections, we hope it goes that way without really political parties boycotting or whatever. But if it goes in a good direction, it can really show major changes in the voters' behavior when it comes to the Muslim Brotherhood or Salafis. But at the same time, what we wanted to do in this film is to humanize Salafis. We didn't want to provide the same image that was provided by the media for the past 50 years, and also still provided by the media daily till now, that Salafis are just the enemies. And when you have an enemy, you do the very simple thing of dehumanizing those people. And as a result, the Salafis media is also dehumanizing the other sector and the liberals and so on. And this will not lead to any result because of our old vision of Salafis, that they don't know how to use internet, they don't have their channels, but the reality is They have their own forums. They use internet they know how to manipulate internet. They have actually their own content using the modernity tools to put their ideology and to make a counter ideology to what we call modernism as well. And they have their own Salafi channels with huge viewership and with real followers who would just trust this medium, and they would never trust what's told on another liberal channel, if we call it that way. And this is, we will never reach a solution in a country like Egypt with this. And that's why I think the first step is to just show people as they are, show that they have dream, they are human beings, they want, I have seen it myself, although I completely disagree with some ideas of my characters in the film, but I have seen the goodwill, and I have seen that they really want the better for the country. And when you're a documentarian and you have this responsibility to, someone is giving you access to his life, even to shoot a text message that he's sending, at least the least we can do is to show their life as it is, not as we want it to appear. Because demonizing is very easy. It would be much more celebrated. It might have been screened in Cannes, you never know, because we demonize Salafis. We provide the stereotype that we always wanted to have about those people. But I truly believe that this is not the time to do that. I always say this comment that I could really link between the situation of Salafis before the revolution and after the revolution. Before the revolution with the Copts, because they were both discriminated against in terms of the image on TV and an image for the hegemonic society in a way. And that's part of our big mistake, because we discovered that they are a lot, they have their own networks, but we don't have access to those people because we never talk to them. I think we wouldn't reach any, excluding is not part of the solution in Egypt at the moment, in anything, not excluding to Salafis and not excluding even to atheists. People know how to go to the street, and in any cases of liberals take over and just exclude Salafis, we will have the same troubles in the street. There is no other way but just sitting together and talk to each other as human beings. That same goes to the West. I think it's really essential to see the situation as it is, not to romanticize the revolution and say it's just so romantic and see how people are just going to the streets and it's very positive and peaceful, but also not to punish countries just for the fear that they have some Salafis or they have some jihadis. At the end of the day, I think I completely reject backwardness, and I'm completely against the Salafi ideology, but at the same time, being liberal does not allow me to think of a solution that excludes these people, although it's actually not possible on the ground. But also, if you're really liberal, you can't just exclude. If you're talking about an NGO is about tolerance and the other and accepting the other and understanding the other, you can't just demonize Salafis, because you will never reach a solution, and we will never reach a country that we can live in at the end of the day. Thank you very much.